Hello and welcome. I'm Charlotte Jones, Education Director at the Museum of Craft and Design. I'm joined today by MCD Assistant Curator Ariel Zacchio and John Randolph, Founding Principal of Randolph Designs and current MCD Exhibition Designer. Welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for contributing to this week's Visible Transparency Project issue of MCD at Home. Before we do begin, I think it would be appropriate to acknowledge my fantastic Zoom background. This detail of Macon Reed's eulogy for the Dyke Bar is not only a reminder to use creativity to cope with the quarantine, but it also ties the three of us together pretty nicely. This piece was included in the 2019 exhibition Interior Exterior, which was curated by Ariel and was one of the first MCD exhibitions that John had designed. Additionally, some of the bottles were crafted by the education team with the help of our fabulous public programs participants. So we've got some good memories here to start. However, as everybody knows, we're not in the museum right now. So originally, we would be pretty far into the midst of exhibition changeover from our current exhibition, Survival Architecture and the Art of Resilience, and Linda Gass, and then this happened. And then this did happen. So as we are trying to coordinate the end of those exhibitions and the upcoming Moto 2020, I just wanted to talk to the two of you about what kind of challenges that has presented and how your design processes have been affected.
Yeah, our process for organizing exhibitions has just about everything to do with keeping to pretty rigid timelines, planning, schedules, all of that jazz. And in the face of the unknown, we're kind of being forced to learn how to regroup around these gray areas and surf the unknown in a way that we don't usually. It's a significant change. We've had to push out our dates for Moto 2020 twice. And coming against that, we're also trying to allow for people to actually visit Survival Architecture and Linda Gass. My background is survival architecture. I'd move, but the sun is actually right there. So that people can actually visit those in person once again. But again, it's unknown. We're hoping and keeping our fingers crossed, but that's about all we can do.
And how has your creative process been affected by that current situation? Like as little or as much as it has been? I mean, are you finding that your routines are having to change because of it?
Yeah, most definitely. I think the routine has changed in that working closely with my assistant, Paul Harbison, we work in a small office. We work very quickly and efficiently together in our thought process. We understand the exhibition space well and, have a good understanding of its spatial constraints. So, when we speak with Ariel and the museum, about the upcoming exhibition, we basically take in as much information as we can, and then we let that gestate, and then boom, we start to get ideas, and then we start moving on those ideas. What has changed for us, though, in this case, because he and I are not working face-to-face, we're working remotely on the next exhibition, is that the momentum of the project has been kind of slowed and is much more herky-jerky than it usually is. And so that is a bit of a challenge. Another thing that's a little bit of a challenge is that, when we create, when people collaborate on ideas, the sheer presence of another human being that is focused on the same task actually feeds the others, right? So in other words, there's a kind of synergy that happens when people come together and physically work on something. In this case, we're disparate. We're through the lens of Zoom. We're through the lens of Skype, or if we're through the lens of just talking on a telephone, or it goes down to something like texting. And so the color, the warmth, the color, the subtlety, the visual clues are kind of lost, and things just don't flow as they have in the past. Doesn't mean we won't be able to figure that out, but it's a new way of dealing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that we're all having to kind of cope with in all of our fields, and especially within education and programs. We're so used to using that space as a gathering point and somewhere to inspire our visitors and our members. So having to, or trying to recreate that feel digitally is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, and I wanted to also add, I also am a teacher, and I don't teach right now. I don't have the time to teach right now, but I teach at California College of the Arts when I do have the time. And you know, my approach is working closely with each one of the students, and so really that face-to-face is an important component of this. One of the things, though, that also kind of has come forward, which I find is a bit of a challenge, is this idea that now the experience that a gallery goer will have is now a bifurcated experience. It's now as an exhibition designer, you think of it in the traditional manner where somebody will physically come and visit the space. They'll be able to interact with the object. They'll be able to come up close to it and see details that you would not be able to see from a screen. And moving into this area of kind of the virtual, I feel that this is territory that is not known to me yet. And it'll be very interesting in the upcoming exhibitions how this idea of communicating to the public through this medium of a screen is going to change things. It's going to turn things to being much more representational as opposed to being very visceral. And, I think we all lean towards the visceral, the intellectual and emotional with objects, but this is going to be one of the challenges that I'm prognosticating.
Are there particular alternate modes of display that you're beginning to research and see that are becoming a little bit more viable, that maybe before had seemed a little bit futuristic, but now they're on the horizon? Well,
yes, there's virtual reality, but I will say, a lot of the technology is actually, in a way, it's kind of classist in a way that not all people have access to Oculus Rift, right? Not all people have access to high-speed internet, right? Or the latest Apple computer, and so, it's very difficult, to anticipate how it's going to come down the line. But, augmented reality is going to be, something coming down the line as well. Again, it has that same problem. There's an application called Fourth Wall, which is quite interesting. It's a reality app that works on your cell phone, and an artist can create a three-dimensional or a virtual three-dimensional piece, and then geolocate it and put it in space and scale it to whatever scale they want to. So there's some really interesting technologies coming down the line. Then there are also 3D walkthroughs, like a company that Ariel turned me on to called Artland, where they will come into a gallery space that's been designed, and they will basically put you in the gallery virtually, and then you can put yourself into whatever location you want in the gallery, and then look at something or move around. Now, the problem with that one, though, is that because of the optics of those of the cameras that are used and how they're stitched together, the perspective becomes quite forced. And yes, you do have the ability to have this kind of God's eye view, or the dollhouse view, as they call it. but that's not realistic. And to be able to move right up on an object and move slightly to the left or to the right to sort of see its subtle beauty is very difficult in that condition. So I think that, again, something like 3D walkthrough is it's nice to have, but it's really representational. It's not like being there.
I just want to echo that. We're working currently on getting virtual 360 walkthroughs of both Survival Architecture and Linda Gass, current and our upcoming exhibition. But it's a question that remains. I mean, this is a good kind of supplement for the time, and it's a good stopgap solution. But what kinds of virtual exhibitions actually work is a question that I don't think anyone has an answer for yet. Replicating the experience of actually seeing an artwork in person virtually is way down the line. There are some amazing things that are happening. Google Arts and Culture, you have the ability to zoom in super close onto a painting such that you could see details in a brushstroke that you wouldn't necessarily even if you were in front of it. However, recreating that affective experience of being in a gallery, seeing a work, and maybe you or absolutely hate it, or maybe you fall in love with it. That's something that I don't think that that I personally haven't successfully seen in a virtual exhibition yet, but that's a huge design solution, and it's a huge door waiting to be opened and waiting to be filled.
Yes, I would agree completely. It's kind of interesting, actually. Before our talk today, Ariel and I spoke, and to this point of experience, I find it difficult to believe that it will be successfully pulled off where you were to see something like Damien Hirst's shark in a tank and convey the power of a piece like that, virtually. I think it would be quite a stretch. That's just one example.
Yeah. The augmented reality question is definitely one that intrigues me a lot, particularly with exhibition design and, being able to really show additional layers of the process specifically. And so I'm encouraged by the idea of being able to utilize that sort of technology in the physical galleries so that you can still see the work and then also watch a video about how it was made at the same time. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
Well, also the only other thing is that I think it's what we need to acknowledge is that artists are actually going to start to adapt in the way that they are making their work, so their work has the kind of quality that they want to convey, and they're going to have to somehow embrace this technology and hopefully use it or misuse it in a way that we can learn more, or we experience more than just relying on an exhibition designer to try to coax out something.
I wanted to echo your thoughts, Charlotte, and just add, because I feel like I was a little negative about virtual exhibitions. One of the amazing positives of virtual exhibitions is that we can embed additional information. We can embed video, we can embed, links, all of that stuff into this virtual exhibition space, which is something that we currently aren't doing with AR in our galleries, but is something that we can easily do with this VR technology that we're about to use now.
Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of interesting for Dead Nuts. We employed this technology that I had not used before, and that was the QR code. So it allowed somebody that was actually physically in the gallery to leave the gallery, standing in front of the piece, and read about or look up some fact about the object that they were looking at. And in a way, this is kind of the inverse of that. We're going to be going to links to see the actual work. And not always, but there will be, obviously, and we can talk about this later, but galleries are going to open up again, and we're going to have to abide by some new standards and some new codes so people stay safe. And it's going to change the experience. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to work it out.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Dead Nuts too, and that wonderful sort of additional information aspect of it, because that has actually been kind of an inspiration for the way that we have constructed the MCD at home newsletters. We have our in-house created projects that you can go to, but those are just peppered with all sorts of other outside links and videos, and like you can go directly to the artist's website directly from the information page for the hands-on project. So it's been a really fun experiment in being able to play with some of that, not even technology, but just formatting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dead Nuts was great.
That's such a great point, Charlotte. And it's making me think of something just off the cuff, that curating actually is responding to the way that we think in an internet fueled world, which is nodular, right? Like you click on one link that sends you to the next link, and then that leads you down a rabbit hole. And I think a lot of curators are responding to those kinds of ideas and making artworks that fit together in more of a rabbit hole or a dovetailing situation, rather than these overarching thematic kind of ideas that tie things together. So maybe we'll see more of that in the future too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it. John, you just mentioned a little bit about the physical considerations for now designing post-COVID. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like to you and how form and function meet or diverge?
I'll do my best, because we are in it right now. There are no standards.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is basically inventing as we go along. We don't have the experience, as a culture, we don't have an experience, at least at this moment. I think in maybe 1918 they experienced it, but they didn't have the tools to distance, and figure that whole thing out. But right now, we're relying on Dr. Fauci and a bunch of other people who are, riffing basically on the situation. So there are no standards. We're really going to have to come up with a kind of logical, no nonsense set of our own rules and do the best we can. Let me try to illustrate, though, as an exhibition designer. When somebody is standing in a gallery, they occupy a space of about 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay, so that's 4 square foot per person, and that 4 square feet moves around a gallery and sees the object and moves through the installation and moves where they want to move. Right now, we have a 6 foot by 6 foot person as they're standing. Mm-hmm. That's a 36 square foot bubble. And so you can see, if you think about 2 bubbles colliding, you try to, in plan view, you try to reduce the number of collisions that bubbles have between 2 people. And so what it does is it really changes the spacing of work, the pacing of the work, how many people can look at a work at one time. Brings into question, distances for reading. If 2 people are standing next to each other, where you place that so that people aren't, tripping over each other or bumping into each other. Areas in the gallery where, because, galleries have usually have 4 walls, or they have some physical constraint. And so you can only put, the work so close. There are requirements for the Americans with Disabilities Act, which, actually are much smaller than a person with, if you're in a wheelchair, that 36 by 36, the 36 square foot bubble still applies to that person in the wheelchair. So now everybody is pretty much on equal footing. And so everything has to space out. We have to keep people apart. People have to try to abide by that rule in the gallery. So it's a collaboration. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this will play out in future installations to come.
I would add to that by saying that museums are kind of uniquely positioned to deal with this problem because we deal with spatial problems in everything we design. We have to make sure that each object has a safe amount of distance so that people aren't coming up to it and trying to touch it. So we've kind of been thinking about this and thinking about how spatial design can not police or control, but can keep people in a certain flow pattern, such that they maintain a safe distance from objects, not necessarily from each other. So now it's just retrofitting those design strategies to reflect back on the visitor as well as on the object.
Exactly. Nicely put.
Well, and we are always sort of challenged with how to use space at Museum of Craft and Design, just because of the constraints of our square footage. So whether it's putting 3 exhibitions in at once or trying to get a large number of people in for an after hours program while also keeping the work safe, it is going to definitely be a brave new world of figuring all of this out. So I feel like we all collaborate pretty well anyway, but it's going to be just that much more sort of intense and important to keep all of that in mind. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Exactly.
Poor Charlotte in the best of conditions has to deal with me telling her to move things and move people so that the objects are safe. So this is going to be a whole new challenge for us.
Well, I can thank both of you personally for the amount of gathering space you have provided in the last few exhibitions. So
Good.
that has been a real treat for me. So thank you. So I'm going to just kind of wrap things up a little bit in the interest of both your screen time and also that of our viewers. But I did want to finally ask a little bit more of a personal question, just about how you are dealing with the anxieties of the unknown. I think everybody is challenged every single day to kind of rejigger what their routine is and what their expectations are for their own output. How are you personally mitigating some of that?
Sure. I'm a total homebody and a total introvert, but this has made me realize how much kind of random interactions with not strangers, but acquaintances have meant to me. So I've actually been going to a lot more artist talks, lectures, virtual exhibitions, things like that, just because I have the time now and I have this kind of deep-seated need to see and consume things that are inspiring, especially now. And that's also the community that I've chosen and have chosen to surround myself with here. So feeling connected to them, even if it is, in this kind of distanced, 3 layers of distanced way is really bolstering and important.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think for myself, I'm in a kind of, I work out of my home. So, sheltering in place has not really been a challenge for me. And it's all set up really nicely to have a client here if I wanted to, but because I'm not doing that right now, I've got my kitchen and my refrigerators right over there. But I also, I have access to movies and films, and I'm in a kind of sponge mode right now.
Mm-hmm.
That sponge mode, in creativity, and anybody who works in creativity has to kind of they have to dip their sponge back in the moisture so they can wring it out on whatever medium they're going to present their ideas. And so I've been really in that mode right now, trying to take in and take the opportunity to take in really some of the things that I've been fascinated with, but have never had the time. And so, that's one aspect of it. I would also say that, as an environmental designer, we learn how to roll with the punches, because basically, the environment is something that is constantly offering up all sorts of, challenging obstacles.
Mhm.
And so, I'm not that stressed out about this. This COVID thing, as rough as it is, it's really, and I'm very fortunate to say this, it's more of an inconvenience for me.
Mhm.
And it's a very serious thing that, I pay a lot of attention to, and I care deeply for people who've been affected. But for me personally, it hasn't been as difficult. But in terms of getting, through, let's say, designing the next exhibition, whenever I embark on a project, and again, go through the period of gestation where I'm trying to take in everything I can, what's the essence of this thing? And then a lot of times it comes as a flash. And a lot of times that comes as a flash further down the line than you want it to. So the timeline to complete it is compressed, right? It becomes compressed. And fear is a great motivator. So, basically that's what I, that's what I revert to is that motivation that, getting it done brings. So it's not business as usual, but, I'm feeling fairly confident in this certain time to be able to continue to do what we do and do it well.
Absolutely. I appreciate that sentiment, and I think that the potential for evolution is great, and to be harnessing it with other creatives like you and all of our colleagues at the museum has been really inspiring. So thank you for everything that you've been doing.
It's my pleasure. I really love working with Museum of Craft and Design.
We love you, John.
Oh.
I guess that unless anybody has anything you want to really add or anything, I think we're about ready to wrap up. I just really appreciate all of your insights, all of your input. I, for one, cannot wait to see you back in the galleries, and when that time comes, then we'll party.
Yeah. I'd love that.
Cheers to being a sponge.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Enjoy it while you can.
Precisely.
Right.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.